Hey everyone, welcome to the Knuckleball Experience Show. Today we are going to have a special guest on here, Dustin Bear. Dustin Bear has thrown the knuckleball since he was in elementary school. He pitched in high school. He pitched at Lenoir-Rhyne College, and he made it all the way up to High A with the Atlanta Braves organization. So let's welcome here to the show, Dustin Bear. Dustin, what's going on, man?
Hey Zach, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, this is a pleasure. Yeah, me and you, we got a lot of history. We've worked together a bunch. We got a lot of shared stories, and I'm really looking forward to this. You have a lot of experience, and yeah, this is gonna be fun. So
Yes, sir. Thank you.
yeah, so I'm gonna start the show off. Just like I start every show off, and I'm gonna tell me about your first experience with a knuckleball. Maybe where you first saw it, or yeah.
So the first time I saw the knuckleball, I remember whenever I was real young. I was probably 8 or 9 years old. My cousin, you know, by all means, he was not versed in the pitch, but just seeing that difference that the pitch had from any other pitch really fascinated me. That was back when Wakefield was pitching. That was probably '01.
Okay.
So studied Wakefield. I was fascinated after I saw him throw that. I even called him up on the phone and say, "Hey man, what was that pitch that you threw me that day?"
Yeah.
And then after that, it was over after that. So I committed and I was fascinated and I was ready to learn that pitch and continue to better myself in that pitch.
Okay. And you said how old were you again?
I was 9 years old.
Nine. Nine.
Yeah,
Awesome. That's crazy.
yeah,
I there's not a lot of people that are that committed that early. It's special. You know what I mean? Like,
it is.
there's not a lot of people that jump on it like that so early. And I commend you on your tenacity and courage to do that. That's awesome. Okay. So you kind of jumped into the next question. When did you start throwing it competitively, and what inspired you? So that's yeah. I mean that's it right there. So from that date forward, you were throwing it in the game, off the mound. How often? Like 80% of the time? What would you say?
Well, at 9 years old, I was just learning it. I
Okay.
wasn't by any means throwing it in a game. I was just fooling around with it like any other 9 year old would after
Okay.
seeing it. I probably started throwing it more competitively, probably 40, 50, not well, I'd probably say 40% of the time, probably when I was about 12 or 13 years old. So
Okay.
I was probably in middle school at the time. Um, but that's when I really started adding it to my arsenal, throwing hitters off, kind of while still working on the conventional type pitches too.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Sweet.
Yeah.
Um, so next question here. How did you grip it? Like maybe how did you start? What was how did you grip it when you first started and then, kind of how did it change through your career?
Right. So when I first started gripping it, I gripped it with a three-finger grip
Okay.
like this. So when I
Yep.
first started throwing it, you know, my hands weren't as big, so that's what felt comfortable to me.
Yeah.
Um, and then I converted to, your standard two-finger grip, something like this here.
Yeah.
Actually, exactly like this here.
Yeah.
Right behind the horseshoe of the baseball
Yeah.
here. And that's what worked best for me, really locking in on the side seam there for a good grip. Um, Middle ring finger here for good stability, kind of upward in, not on the direct side of the baseball, but more upper end, keep it stabilized. And, my pinky was just resting over here on the side for extra stability. But I transitioned into that grip because I was told at one point that a lot of these pro knuckleballers that I've worked with in the past, they don't like to see a three-finger grip knuckleball.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, whenever I meet someone, I show them that grip, and that's what I've heard. but then you got Tom Candiotti who had a three finger grip.
Exactly.
So I
Yeah.
don't know, you know,
I guess
it's
it's a preference thing too.
preference
So
thing. Yeah,
yeah,
if you kill and spin, can't argue with that. Awesome.
exactly.
So, all right, that's pretty good. All right, so we get to some of the meat and potatoes, the real good stuff here. Um, so how did your approach to pitching with a knuckleball mature? So like when you first started, were you trying to make it move too much? Were you trying to just let them hit it? Were you overthrowing it early on or how did you pitch it? What was your approach, when you first started? Were you just scared, timid, just lobbing it? From when you were 12 to, I want to see the whole um timeline from when you were 12 to, till you're at high A.
Right. Okay. So, when I was first starting to throw the pitch, the one thing that I really focused on was killing the spin. And then, at that age, when you're just now getting your feet wet and you're starting to throw it competitively, you take a little off of it to try to kill the spin. You're not used to throwing the thing hard and killing the spin and making it dance more. So, my approach whenever I was, younger was to, miss the sweet spot, so to speak, but kill the spin. I wasn't trying to overpower it. I was just kind of letting it do its thing. But at that age too, a lot of the times the knuckleball is more likely a changeup. It's not moving, like you would see it when, you and I were pitching affiliated ball, but it was still an effective pitch because if you're sitting there throwing your fastball, boom, 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 and then you throw them a knuckleball in there, maybe 15, 20 mile an hour off, then you're going to you're going to miss some bats here and there. So that's what I focused on early on. Now, whenever I started, progressing in my career, high school, one thing that I will say is I learned and I was very fortunate to learn at this age that, I don't have the conventional stuff to make it as far as I want to make it. So I had to make a decision. Hey, are you going to hang it up now, or are you going to keep this knuckleball thing going and really focus on it? And then, of course, we all know the ending of this story. I kept throwing the knuckleball. I tried to get the speed up, continue to kill the spin. But really, the knuckleball, man, I mean, you changing your speeds up, throw it hard, throw it soft, kind of throw off the hitters because you're only throwing one pitch. You don't have a curve. You do have a curve, but you're going to let up on the knuckler here and throw it a little harder here, and it has different movements. So that's kind of the approach that I took. If they hit it, they hit it. If they missed it, they missed it. But I was going to throw it as effectively as I could.
Can you expand on maybe how you change speeds with a knuckleball, and why did you change speeds with a knuckleball versus maybe, you know, throwing other pitches like a change up or slider? I mean, those are changing speeds. But
Yes.
tell me why you changed speeds with a knuckleball and how you did that. Maybe, like you saw something in the batter, or tell me about that.
Right. So I always believed that the knuckleball was going to be my bread and butter. So if they were going to beat me, they were going to beat me hitting my knuckleball. Um, one thing that I did, and it's a misconstrued statement. Um, a lot of people say, when you're changing your speed on a pitch, you're slowing everything down. No, you don't. You don't change nothing. Only thing that you do is change the aggression or the way that you are aggressively throwing that pitch. And that's one thing that I tried to do. I tried to make the hitter know, hey, look, he's about to throw a knuckleball, a hard knuckleball. But then I would kind of change there and pivot at the end, and it would be a slower one.
Okay.
What that did was it got them out on their front foot a little bit. Still moving, of course, but it changed just a split or a few mile an hour change can throw off a hitter completely. And then maybe the next pitch would be one of the harder ones, 70, 71, too. I mean, it's just that's the approach that I took. I didn't really throw. I did have a curveball. I didn't throw it much, because if they were going to beat me, they were going to beat me throwing my knuckleball.
Yes, I like that. Okay. So, all right. Maybe talk to me about how you use your fastball in the game. When would you throw it? What was your approach with that? Your fastball.
Yeah, so I would throw my fastball whenever I had a lot of consecutive knuckleballs that I'd thrown. Just to, and to be honest with you, I would throw it in the zone. Probably I like to throw it a little high in the zone, kind of get it at the eye level, because whenever they see that thing coming in there a little harder than your knuckleball, they're going to try to pounce all over it. You and I both know that. So tried to make sure that they didn't get a good swing on it. But I'd rear back and throw it. I didn't have the fastest fastball. I probably sat about 85 with my fastball, but 85 coming from 69 to 70 looks about like 95. So that really threw the hitters off, but I would use it effectively, especially just to give them a different look.
Okay, nice. So maybe you can talk about this, but like, you got guys like Wakefield, you got guys like R.A. Dickey. So Wakefield, right, he was around 65, 66, and I think Dickey was like upper 70s. What's your opinion on, I don't know, the speed of the pitch? Like, even for me, like I've heard, just from other people say, "Oh, you're throwing that too hard." And I was at the time I was probably throwing like 71. I mean, um, how do you think that affects the pitch, like velocity? Do you think someone should find what works for them, or should they, oh no, you have to throw it harder, you got to throw it at this speed or in this window? What's your opinion on that?
Right. So my opinion on that would be I think R.A. Dickey set the standard when it come to throwing that pitch as hard as he did, because he would throw that thing up in the 80s,
Yeah.
which is unheard of. When Wakefield was coming in, he threw it 49 when he first started,
Oh, okay.
when he was pitching for the Pittsburgh Pirates. So, um, I'd say whatever feels comfortable to you.
Okay.
Whenever and however hard it is you're seeing the most movement,
Mhm.
try to stay within that range, but don't be afraid to lower it any or throw it a little harder. But do
Okay.
I think you need to throw it 80 mile an hour? No, I don't.
Okay. That's yeah. I know some people are like, confused. I think like Dennis Springer, I don't know if you've seen him, but
Yeah,
he it looked like he lobbed it up there. It was like, but
he did. It
he
did
was in
look
the big
like that.
leagues. The guy
Oh,
was
yeah.
getting outs. So
Well, the Pittsburgh Pirates, when Wakefield was pitching, man, I'm telling you, he
yeah.
had them guys looking ugly. And that
Oh
thing was,
yeah.
like I said, 49 mile an hour. That was his consistency back then.
Yeah.
But again, that's when he first started throwing it in
Yeah.
games. So,
Yeah.
they were about to release him, and then
Mhm.
they brought him in and he started flicking the knuckleball up there. So, yeah. So what I was saying was, Dickey, he threw, 80s. Wakefield, when he came in, he was very effective with a 49-mile-an-hour knuckleball. Of course, he didn't finish with that speed. He was consistently, 65 to 69 mile an hour. Very rarely you saw him throw it above 70. But I think that it's whatever works best for the individual. Whatever you're seeing, whatever's working for you, definitely stay in that area, in that range, but don't be afraid to, you know, ramp it up a little bit, or take some off here and there.
Right. Right. Um, that's good. That's good. I like that. Um, I don't know. We've heard it a lot. I guess RA. He talked about finding himself with the pitch, and one time in his career, I think he was trying to emulate Tim. Um,
Yeah.
was there time that maybe you were doing that, and you went through the learning curve, and you figured out who you were, what you were. Was there time during that period, and what was that like?
Yeah. So, like I stated earlier in the interview, whenever I was first throwing it, Tim Wakefield was the only one throwing it. So there wasn't really anybody to really emulate, as you would
Yeah.
say, or
Hmm.
learn from. So, kind of whenever you're a young kid and you see this guy out there throwing knuckleballs in the big leagues, getting outs and, pitching for 19 years, you kind of try to mimic what they're doing. But later on in my career, yes, I took some of the things that I learned from watching Tim throughout my childhood. But, I agree 100% with R.A. Dickey, bonding himself with the pitch, finding his identity within the pitch. And that's something that I had to do from a mechanical standpoint. And while mixing your pitches and your speeds, it's like whatever's working best for you. And that's what I really had to come to realization with.
Nice. Nice. All right. Well, we can go back to some of the approach stuff, but
Yeah.
we'll move on to, maybe talking about mechanics and maybe, what are some of the adjustments you made when you first started throwing, and then some of the adjustments, you made through your career. So like I know for me, when I first started throwing it, I was very aggressive, and then I made some adjustments and I was a little more maybe, I don't know, tame. I didn't get aggressive until late. So anyway, something
Right.
like that. I don't know what that looked like for you in your career.
Yeah. So, like any kid, you're going to want to come up. You're going to want to be the hardest thrower. You're going to want to be the most aggressive player. It takes a lot to go out there and pitch with less than all you got.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that you have to do when you're throwing this pitch. You can't go out there and think that you're going to sit here and be aggressive every pitch, because that's when you start making mistakes. Yes, be aggressive, but don't be overly aggressive. This pitch is not an overly aggressive pitch. This is a precise pitch. It is very fragile, I would say.
Yeah.
It's something that you have to repeat over and over again in order to get that feel. It's a feel pitch. You have to feel the pitch and how it leaves your hand and be able to determine whether or not you're throwing it well. And you might throw it well and you might not. The elements might not be in your favor that day.
Hmm.
But having the feel is more than being aggressive with the pitch. So if you being less aggressive helps you throw the pitch even better than you would if you were aggressive, then maybe you need to be a little bit more passive aggressive with the pitch. So per se, one thing that I do a little pitching lessons on the side, and one thing that I try to teach a lot of the kids that I help teach is stay within yourself. You know your limits with any pitch, and that's no different with the knuckleball. So stay within yourself. Don't try to be somebody that you're not. Be you. Find your identity.
Yeah. So maybe put a number on it, 100%, like all out. I'm gonna throw it as hard as I can. 10% just kind of like boop. Where when you were just throwing strikes and pounding zone, where do you think you were on that range there? You think when you're throwing it,
If I had to get it over the plate, I'd probably say 60%.
you were doing 6% effort when you were just throwing strikes. I'm throwing strikes for
Yeah.
outs right now. Okay, so you
Yeah.
sat around
60ish.
60.
Yeah.
That was your
60 to
effort.
70.
That was your
Yeah.
effort level. Like that's
Yeah.
not velocity, but that was your effort level. Okay, that's
Exactly.
cool.
Trying to stay within myself. So, a little, and you and I both know this, a little something that you alter just a little bit with this pitch will make it get hit a long way. So staying within yourself, your comfort zone, that's going to give you more success than if you try to come out of that comfort zone and stay outside of that comfort zone. Sometimes you have to take a step back and say, hey, look, maybe my approach is a little off.
All right. Let's see. What about in terms of, these are all different variables for pitchers. Maybe talk about like stride length. Did you mess around your stride length? I know a lot of people like for me, one cue for me was staying tall. I was gonna
Yes.
get down. I knew it was gonna happen, but what I wanted to think about staying tall was I don't know if there's something with, I don't know, did you mess around with your stride length that worked for you or helped you out, or any of those little checkpoints?
Yeah. Well, I changed it up.
Okay.
So I was kind of obviously, whenever you're going to, and I'll go back to the question that you asked previously, kind of touch on that a little more. So at 60%, that was my approach. Hey, I got to get it over the plate. I don't want it to
Okay.
move too much to where it's not going to be a strike. I want to work ahead.
Yeah.
When you get more ahead in the count, then of course, when you're more aggressive, you can boost that up to 80, 85%.
Yeah.
Um, but your stride's probably going to be a little bit more aggressive, a little further out there.
Okay.
One thing that I did with my stride is I did a lot of slide stepping. I didn't
Okay.
have a leg kick that much. It was more of just like, if you had to compare it to anybody, if you notice Phil and kind of how he took his front body or his hips toward the catcher instead of his entire foot or leg sub per se. I did a lot of slide stepping whenever I was pitching. I tried to take as much movement out of the pitch as possible so I could really focus on throwing it effectively.
Simplify. You try to. It sounded to me like maybe you're simplifying. Your arms weren't like
Yes.
flying all over the place. Very
Right.
simple. And that, and that's another question that I'd like to ask is like, in terms of consistency, right? There's a lot of guys on the sidelines that are throwing a big league knuckleball where it doesn't spin, but the trick is how consistent can you throw it? That goes for any pitcher, fastball, curveball, whatever. So for
Yes.
you, what are what were you doing when you were consistent? When you were throwing it well and consistent, I mean, what are some cues like, you know, that helped you be more consistent? I don't know. That helps.
Um, One thing that I would say would be making sure, and this is just a physical type deal, make sure you keep
Yeah.
your fingernails trimmed.
Okay. That's
You
good.
don't want no catching on the
Yeah.
ball. You don't want no
Okay.
spin. When you got them clean cut, you kind of eliminate any possibilities, and then you can really get down on the feel of the ball.
Okay.
Um, but I cued in on the feel. If you think about it,
Yeah.
uh, consistency comes from feel,
Yeah.
regardless of the pitch that you throw. Arm slot. I made sure my arm slot was where it needed to be at all
Okay.
times. I tried to stay within a door frame. So I'm not
Yes.
flailing out. I'm not. I'm
Yes.
staying within
Yep.
myself. That's what really helped drive my consistency. Yes. Besides that, I would just say the mentality. I kept my mental toughness sharp, and I made sure that I didn't, and any pitcher in this game, if you really get down on yourself, it'll really ruin you. So one thing that I tried to do was stay mentally tough. And I think
Mm,
that whenever my mental toughness was at its peak, I was the most consistent with the pitch.
okay. That's good. Um, that's good stuff. Uh, all right. And if anything else comes up and you want to bounce around, have at it. I'm
Yes.
gonna go to the
Thank you.
next question. So, what does your preseason and in-season throwing program look like? Did you only do flat ground work? Did you only throw off the mound? Did you long toss the knuckleball? Did you throw it against the wall? Like, these are all things I've heard. Was there something that worked for you? Something you noticed, or what was that like?
Um, I'm gonna be honest with you. I was never a big fan of the flat ground. Wasn't a big fan of the flat ground work because the reason why I say that is because you work off a mound. And with that pitch, just going from a flat surface to a mound can really throw you off. So I tried to stray away from flat ground as much as possible. Whenever I was in off season, and this is going to sound crazy, but I was probably throwing 500 knuckleballs a day, just getting the feel, the consistency, the reps in.
Yeah.
Had a local high school, or actually the high school that I went to, and I was there every day, just throwing it, getting the feel. And if I felt like something was starting to come off, I would quit because the last thing that I wanted to do was form bad habits and not know about it. So if I was starting to see more spin on the baseball than I thought, I would just call it a day. so that you can kind of avoid that. Um, Long tossing, love to long toss the knuckleball. I probably long tossed it. I tried to long toss it, especially when I was in spring training. I long tossed it all the time, even in college. Not only is it fun to long toss it because it has a lot more distance to start moving around. You get a little laughs on the sidelines with the guy that's catching with you. But one thing that I thought about long tossing was it helps you build your arm strength for the pitch. So if there ever was a time, like Phil Necro used to tell me, if you've got him 0-2, his ass is yours. If you got him 0-2 count, so you need to come with him with the best knuckleball you got. And I'm sure he's told you that too. But that's kind of the approach that I took. I was going to throw a hard knuckleball if I had you 0-2, and you were not going to hit it. And that long tossing is what really helped me define and refine that pitch when I had to throw it at that time.
Nice. I guess. So when you all right, you grabbed your glove, maybe you stretched, warmed up.
Yeah.
Would you from the get go knuckleballs
Yes.
at short distance and then work back, or would you just
Yeah.
go back to 60? Would you go straight back to 60 feet throwing them?
So
How
what I
was
would
that?
do
What was
is,
that like?
I'd start short, get the
Yeah,
feel, you
yeah,
know, um, and then I'd work my way back. I would probably work 120, 150 feet.
yeah.
And then whenever I started getting to the point where I was bouncing a lot of them to them, I would work back in, and then I would try to throw on a line. Long tossing, you're trying to air it out, you're trying to make it to them. But as I was working back in, I tried to throw that knuckleball on a line to them, all the way back in.
All right. Kind of talked about it earlier, and we might be getting in the weeds here, but when you were throwing, uh, I have my own opinions about it. When you were throwing with your partner catcher on on the side, were you tracking spin, or were you just throwing it and trusting the feel? Like you could feel, hey, I got under that, adjust, or were you getting visual, hey, I got under that ball? Like tell me about that. Like how did you make adjustments? Did you make adjustments off of feel or what it looked like, or both?
So I would say kind of a combination of both.
Yeah.
Um, let's say if I throw one and I saw it, hey, spinning, and I saw it spinning a little bit more than I wanted to, but I felt it. Like I was like, you know what? I think I got under that one a little bit. You could feel it,
Yeah.
you'll see it, but then you'll
Yeah.
feel what you felt, and then make the adjustment the next time you throw it.
Okay.
Type deal. But I was
I got you.
I like to be visual with the knuckleball
Oh
because
yeah.
that's what really helps you adjust not only the feel but the visual as well.
That's pretty cool. All right. Um, that's pretty good. So, what about, like you said, bounce around if you want. Maybe talk about your best outings, maybe one or two of your best outings, and maybe one or two your toughest outings, maybe rough outings, and maybe walk me through the game and uh yeah, experience, right? It's not all sunshine, rainbows and stuff,
Nope.
and we have to learn, like for the listeners, guys that are learning out, like there's a learning curve. It's steep, not all the time. It doesn't have to be, but you're not alone. And anyway, maybe start with your toughest outing, and then go to say whatever you want to do. But go ahead.
So probably my best outings that I had was probably a series of them, and that was when I was in spring training with the Braves.
Yeah.
They didn't keep up with stats or nothing, but my knuckleball was moving really good. Um, I believe I kept up with my own stats, but I believe it was like 29 innings. I had a sub 2 ERA, so it was below the 2 mark. Had a lot of swing and misses, a lot of Ks. The knuckleball was just moving amazing. Rightfully so. Down in Florida, you got that humidity and everything. You got a lot of factors playing in your favor down there as a knuckleballer. So getting the talking to some of the big leaguers that were down there rehabbing, taking swings off of you. Some of the players that are in the bigs now that you actually had an opportunity to pitch against, and them telling you kind of the caliber of knuckleball you were throwing.
Yeah.
That really was a uplift, especially even today. Some of the guys are getting paid big money, and you've pitched against them, and they've told you what your knuckleball's like. And I know I saw your clip. You pitched to David Ortiz. I mean, big name.
Yeah.
So, but those were probably the best outings in my knuckleball career. I've had a lot of good outings, but those are the ones that mean the most to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, I mean, they're professional hitters. It's pretty memorable, right?
Very
That
much
they
so,
belong.
yes.
Yeah, it's pretty memorable. So, okay.
Yeah. The worst outing I had was probably my first college game.
Yeah.
Um, I was going out there and I was a reliever. My first year in
Yeah.
college, I played at North Carolina Wesleyan College. It's a D3 school out in Rocky Mount, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Then I transferred to Lenoir-Rhyne after that year. But the first batter I faced, he put one over the wall on me.
Yeah.
And that was kind of, hey, listen, man, you're not in high school no more. These boys going to
Yeah.
be able to hit, right?
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, I appreciate that day because it really made me drive. It made me get some grit about the pitch, and it really made me boost my aggression with the pitch. And with that being said, after that year, I had a rookie pitcher of the week that year. I finished with about a 4 ERA that year,
Yeah.
and I was probably one of the top relievers in the conference that year. So not being able, not laying down, but really getting yourself back up, having exactly that mentality, having that right mentality, and approaching it again with the same approach.
Mm-hmm.
It really paid off in the long run.
Yeah. Perseverance. I'm hearing a lot of perseverance and grit
Yes.
and grind. And I mean, you got to learn from your mistakes, but you have to, yeah, you got to keep pushing on, keep pressing on. Absolutely. I'm kind of maybe bounce around here a little bit. I know, in terms of spin on the ball, we're if you could bottle one up, and I know other people have talked about it, if you can bottle up one pitch, how would it spin? I don't know, maybe grab the baseball. Would you want a side spin, two rotations, top spin, back spin? In your opinion, what would if you can bottle one up, what would it be like from your hand to the catcher? Like, so it's a goal for somebody. Like if they're training, you're
Right.
like, okay, yeah,
Um, I will say this: if I was going to miss spin, I would want it to have forward spin.
yeah,
And the reason why is because if it's forward spin, it's going down. It's going to have that downward trajectory. The last thing that you want to do is miss with an upward spin because that thing's going to be selling up a little bit, yeah, and it's going to get smashed.
yeah.
But me personally, if you see here, I like to get sort of it's not a complete side spin, but sort of like a
Almost
downward
like a
side.
football,
Right. Yes.
good spiral.
I in my experience with the knuckleball, I think that those types of balls had the most movement, kind of
Yeah,
like turning this way, where it's hitting all those seams as it's spinning, and not just two seams here, but hitting all these different seams here as it's spinning a little bit that way. I
yeah.
think that was the best knuckleballs that I threw when they had that type of spin rate on it.
Okay. Um, let's see here. How about this? This is fun, exciting. You had a lot of experience working with Phil Necro, and he passed away last year, and he's the Godfather or whatever.
Yeah.
Let can you talk to listeners? Maybe give me three things that he taught you that you think a prospective pitcher should know. You know what I mean? Top three things that he
Yes.
taught you that some kid that's trying to learn to pitch that he would want to pass forward, or you think that he should pass forward that they should hear.
Yeah. So I would say Phil taught me a lot of mentality with the pitch. I don't think that it was anything when I was working with him that I didn't have the caliber. I think that it was more of a mentality.
Okay.
Um, a lot of the times Phil would work, situational. Hey, Dustin,
Okay.
what are you going to throw this time? You got him 1-2 or 1-1, or you're down 2-1. What do you got to do? So it was a lot of mental, situational type deals, and he taught me how to approach that. For instance, if you're down in 2-1 or 3-1, even more than likely you're going to have to kind of put your pride to the side and throw that sucker over the plate. But again, and I've mentioned this previously in the interview. If you've got them 0-1, 1-2, or I'm sorry, 0-2, 1-2, you better go for the juggler. And
Yeah.
that's one thing Phil taught me. If
Yeah.
you got them in a tough spot, if you've got them in your hands,
Yeah.
you better throw them the best knuckleball you got.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, but Phil, one thing that I remember Phil telling me whenever we were working together is the arm slot. The arm slot, you want to come down here. And
Yeah.
that's one thing I remember it to this day. He was adamant. And when I started doing that more and more and noticing myself doing that, that ball was moving all over the place. So
Yeah.
those would be the three things. The mental game, it plays a huge role in being a knuckleball pitcher. Going after your hitters, knowing your situations, knowing when you can throw a slow knuckleball, knowing when you can throw your comfort zone knuckleball, and when you need to bust one in there on them. And then of course the arm slot that he taught. It was and there's a lot of other ones, but those are the three that really stand out to me.
Awesome. Awesome. All
Yeah.
right. Maybe can you talk about holding runners on and maybe the importance of that and what you did? What was your because we all know, right? It's hard to catch, guy's gonna drop the ball. It's slow, it's tough.
Yeah.
What was your approach? What did you use? You holds, you talked about it earlier, your slide step. So you use that
Yeah.
all the time?
Yeah. So, I knew that, the knuckleball was a slow pitch to your point, and I knew that I had to bridge the gap somewhere, or I'm going to sit there and they're going to steal off me all the time. So that's when I started going with the slide step and, try to keep them at bay. I would do picks, not even a necessary pick. I mean, I would just throw it over there. Just let them know, hey, buddy, I know you're over there. Um, Sometimes, if it was in a situation where I felt like that a steal might have been on, I'd have probably threw the knuckleball a little harder, let it travel to the catcher a little quicker, give the catcher an opportunity to get him out. But in terms of the drop pitches, man, those are just something that comes with the knuckler.
Oh yeah.
There ain't nothing that you can do about it. Just shake those off. Your catcher's doing the best he can back there. I'm telling you, I've caught Stanowic's knuckleball, and it's not easy. I'm not a knuckleball catcher. I've never been a knuckleball catcher. Never want to be a knuckleball catcher. Um, so them guys are doing the best they can back there.
Yeah.
So don't let those get to you.
Gotcha. Awesome. So I'm gonna kind of segue into you got a kid, he's I don't know, let's say he's in high school and he wants to learn this pitch. What would you say? Like maybe give me a real rough roadmap for this kid. He's 15. Hey Dustin, I've messed around with it. I want to throw it in the game, man. And right now he's a little inconsistent with it. What would you say? Like, I don't know, maybe a quick roadmap. What does he need to be doing? Or advice? What
Well,
what
the first
advice would
thing
you
that I
give
would,
him?
yeah, the first thing that I would do, and let's just try to go back a little bit in age.
Yeah,
I would say for any kid, 9, 10 year old, because that's when I started getting fascinated with the pitch. That's when I fell in love with the pitch.
yeah,
Very young age.
yeah,
I would recommend everybody learn the knuckleball.
yeah,
And the reason why I say that is because it has saved so many careers including my own.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so I think that not knowing it and then finding out that you don't have it, what it takes, is not as good as knowing that you don't know have what it takes, but you have something in your back pocket. So in by all means, I'm not expecting you to be as consistent with it as you would be if you committed to it at 9 years old, but have an understanding of it. What would I tell a 15-year-old that's a little bit more versed, but maybe not that consistent? Keep working, throw it. The key to getting good at the pitch is repetition, but not so much repetition where you start developing bad habits. Work on your mentality, work on your dexterity, work on the work on different situations, work different speeds. What's working best for you, and just keep throwing it.
So they need
And
to
I
be
will
out
say
there.
this too, Zach. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. One, I would say this: you're going to have a lot of people that down your knuckleball, down the
Okay.
pitch,
Oh,
but a
yeah.
lot of those people do not know what a knuckleball is because they've never seen one that they appreciated. If they were to see a knuckleball they appreciate, I promise you they would not down it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's what really drove me throughout my career.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. Maybe I'm gonna go back just a hair. So like, you know, they should be throwing it 80% of the time, at least 3, 4 times a week, at least.
Yes,
Someone that's learning it, they need to be doing that. They need to
exactly.
be probably pitching in games and saying, "Hey, coach, I'll pitch slop innings, like you know, that kind of stuff." Getting out there,
Exactly.
getting experience, because we all know guys can throw well off the on the sidelines, but get on the mound. It's a different game. We can talk about it. We can do all this. You can watch YouTube videos, but you need to get on the mound, it sounds like, and get that experience.
Yeah. And I will say this too, back to the point that I made previously.
Yeah.
Tim Wakefield again, I'll bring him back
Yeah.
up. He was
Yeah.
signed as a first baseman. He set the home
Yeah.
run record at Florida Tech, 22 home runs, 71 RBIs, also the season record. On the verge of being released due to underperformance.
Yeah.
But it only took one person to see him throw that knuckleball in the sideline. And that guy threw 19 years in the big leagues.
Yeah.
So you never know who's watching.
Yep.
And you never know when having that knuckleball in your arsenal is going to pay off.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's right. It only takes one. You don't need a bunch. You just need one organization. I mean, if that's your goal, to
Right.
believe in it. So that's good. It's inspirational for sure. That's pretty good. Um, well, Dustin, man, we've covered a lot tonight, and it's great. I haven't talked in a while, and this is awesome. Is there is there anything maybe we didn't cover uh that you'd like to maybe talk about, speak about, for somebody that's wanting to learn this pitch or pitch with it competitively?
No, we went over a lot of information and
Yeah,
very, I will say this. Had I had the information ready available to me whenever I was coming up,
yeah,
that what you're doing here, and I'm
yeah,
telling you what, I completely support this, Zach. One thing that I'll say to the individuals that happen to be looking at this experience here would be if you need anything from me, any tips, pointers, encouragement, feel free to reach out. Be more than happy to pass this thing down because it is a dying art at this time.
yeah, yeah. So, if you don't mind, I mean, how can they get in touch with you? Where are you at? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I'm in Wilkesboro, North Carolina. Be more than happy to give my email address if they would like, or and then of course once we get acclimated, we can um, phone numbers, whatever,
Yeah.
text, phone call. More than happy to help any way I can.
All right, Dustin, man. I really appreciate you coming out here and taking the time out of your day. I know you're real busy, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you work with some guys and see what happens from this project here. So anyway, let's stay in touch, dude, and see what happens. So um,
Yes,
appreciate
sir.
it,
Thank you for
Dustin.
having me, Zach.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, sir. You
All right.
too.